Louie T. Welcome to the 2018 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series, where your man Louie T aims to break down all 32 teams in the National Football League's 2018 NFL Draft using our baseball grading scale: single, double, triple, home run. There are no strikeouts here in the Draft Wrap-Up Series, because we cannot tell how these players are going to pan out, and I don't want to discount any of these young men before they get their chance in the National Football League. And so we'll get a score for each and every single player selected in said team's draft. We'll apply bonuses when necessary, add up that score, get an aggregate, divide by the number of picks, which will then yield us an overall grade for that team's draft. We'll then move on to the next team in the series picked by you. That's right, you, the viewer, are in total control, as this is the You Pick format. Simply be the first to leave a comment in the comment section of this and future videos in this series stating two things: the phrase next and the team you'd like to see next. An example would be Raiders next, Raiders next, Oakland next, Oakland Raiders next. You get where I'm going with this. And speaking of which, the next team up in the series is none other than the Oakland Raiders. And this is a team that, I'm not gonna lie to you, has really thrown me for a loop this offseason, thrown me a huge curveball when I was sitting dead red fastball. I have no idea what this team is doing under John Gruden right now. Gruden is coming in and obviously getting the roster to where he's comfortable with it being. Now, it seems like a lot of veterans have been added to this roster, and there's nothing wrong with that if the guys can still play at a relatively high level, i.e. Jordy Nelson, i.e. Doug Martin, i.e. Derek Johnson. However, the draft at first blush seemed a little off as well. And when you coupled the two together, everyone was saying the same thing, including myself. What in the hell are the Oakland Raiders doing? But after I had a chance to analyze this draft, I'm here to tell you I was wrong. This is actually a strong draft, and I know exactly what they were trying to do, especially at the beginning of this draft. They wanted to get stouter, stronger, and better, more athletic too, in both trenches of the football, on both sides, on defense and offense. Derek Carr got his ass whooped last year, absolutely torn a new asshole, because his offensive line, especially the tackles, weren't good enough to keep him upright. Derek Carr, not the same quarterback when under siege and duress, and so he needs to be protected. And if you're going to spend the amount of money the Raiders spent on investing in Derek Carr, you best protect that investment. They spent a ton of money on the interior of the offensive line. Now they're spending more assets to secure the outside of that offensive line at both tackle positions. And so that's where we start in this draft, this 2018 9-player haul for the Oakland Raiders under new head coach John Gruden and Reggie McKenzie still holding it down. Let's see what they were able to put together as we get to their first pick in this draft, 15th overall. Offensive lineman out of UCLA, Kolton Miller, is where we start with this Raiders draft. So there were a lot of people, including myself, who weren't a huge fan of the Raiders draft initially, and a lot of it was because we flat out didn't like the picks at the time. And again, it's never sexy to pick an offensive lineman in the first round, but when you need one, you need one. And they needed an offensive lineman, and so they went offensive tackle first. Now, this one in particular, everyone was saying, Kolton Miller this early? And so, again, I've always been a proponent of get your guy when you feel the need to get your guy. This was not a tackle-rich draft. So, because of that fact, you couldn't afford to wait and say, I'll get one in the second round. You're going to miss out on an opportunity to get a guy that could potentially jump in and start right away, or give you the comfort that you're looking for to say, hey, we can put this guy on the blind side, or we can put this guy out and start him day one if need be, right off the bat. If you're looking for elite level talent, at the tackle position in this particular draft, you're going to have to act fast because those guys are going to go quickly because, again, there weren't many to begin with. Kolton Miller was one of the few in this draft that gave you size, length, and athleticism all in one package. And when you watch him on tape, you see that right away. Now, again, was it a little early for Kolton Miller? Sure it was. But was that the necessity that the position necessitated? Absolutely. And again, when you sit back and you analyze this Raiders draft, you understand what the thought process was and why they did what they did when they did it. I don't have a problem with it. So let's jump into Kolton Miller. 6'9", 309, 34-inch arms. Right there is what you're looking for. Quintessential NFL tackle right there. Big, long, and adequate size. Now, does he need to get bigger? Yeah, and 309 wasn't his playing weight. He was a little bit closer to 300 at his playing weight. And will he put on a little bit more? Maybe. Will the Raiders ask him to put on a little bit more? Maybe. But in any event, this is a guy that, watching him on tape, I see why the Raiders did what they did. So you go to measurables, obviously. This is a guy that 6'9", 309, 34-inch arms. Need I say more? Athleticism, 4'9", 540. So the guy is an elite athlete for his size at that particular position. That is elite athleticism. He had a cut block versus Stanford where he literally went up the field about 5 yards and then went diagonally 7 yards. So up the field and towards the sideline. In all, he covered about 12 yards worth of space, and he was able to execute a cut block that sprung his running back. That is unheard of and insane from a guy all the way at the left tackle position to literally get all the way up the field and outside the tackle box on the opposite side and make a cut block that springs his running back. That's the kind of athlete, though, that Kolton Miller is. Technique, his hand placement is inconsistent. I could see him getting a few holding calls throughout the course of his career. I thought he struggled a little bit with USC's Nwosu. Here's the thing. For a guy with as much athleticism as Kolton Miller has, I think that he can be a little out of his stance, a little slow out of his stance. And obviously, he can be affected by bull rush when he opens up too quickly to speed. And he's not a guy with a ton of girth, a lot of sand in his trunk. So if he opens up too soon and doesn't have enough on that inside foot, he's susceptible to giving up inside pressure and giving up some bull rushes. And I thought Nwosu out of USC gave him fits, getting off the ball just extremely fast. And so it's just something he'll have to work on, you know, just more so hand placement. I thought Nwosu just did a great job of timing up the snap. You're not going to get guys that do that and be as explosive as he was in conjunction with timing up the snap. The hand placement is more of my concern with him, but everything else looks good from a technique standpoint. Anchor, I just put down, he needs to get stronger. Versus Washington, Vita Vea literally just pushed him out of the way and was able to split a double team and get to the quarterback and get a sack because Kolton Miller wasn't strong enough to knock him off his path or at least push him into the guard and more into the double team. It just wasn't strong enough. And so he needs to get a little bit stronger. But if he uses his length to his advantage, then his anchor will be just fine. So that kind of goes back to technique, using your hands and shooting them. And again, I always equate being a tackle to being a boxer with reach. Got to use your jab. And it's no different for tackles. Got to use your punch. Got to use your jab to keep that rusher at a distance and away from your body. And you want to land first. Balance and redirect, really good for a guy his size. Toughness, he plays with a level of toughness that you like. And I think that's something that also adorned him to the Raiders. Pass blocking ability, good bounce out of his stance. You can see the athleticism really show up when he's asked to run, get up the field, whether it's out on the boundary and out wide on a wide receiver screen, and he's the kick out block, or you pull him, or you ask him to get up the field after a double team and get up to the second level. But also when he's out of his stance, he gets out of his stance. He gets out of the block so fluidly and easily, and I think he's got really good bounce on his feet. Run blocking, to me, is really solid. Again, not going to knock your socks off with any one trait in the blocking department, but he's pretty solid. Looks to finish every block to the whistle. I like that about him, and I talked about his toughness, and I think his finish is something else that the Raiders probably loved. There's nothing nice about the trenches. I say this all the time. There's nothing nice about in the trenches, offensive or defensive lines. There's nothing nice about what's going on down there. It's dog eat dog. Physical man wins, and you can't show any mercy, and you got to be mean. It's one of those positions where you can't afford to be nice. If at worst, if you're not a mean guy, just don't say anything. But you can't be a nice guy. Nice guys don't win in the trenches, and he's got a nasty streak to him, does Kolton Miller. Recovery. I talked about Nwosu from USC giving him fits, but he was able to recover in both of those instances to push him around, or at least hold him up enough that Josh Rosen was able to get rid of the football. So that length, those 34-inch arms do come in handy when talking and regarding Kolton Miller. Pulling, I think he's outstanding as a mover. Again, 4'9", I don't have to explain to you that this guy moves exceptionally well for his size. And you see that when he's being asked to pull. And so, again, another reason you know that the Raiders were intrigued by what Kolton Miller brought to the table. And then availability. Let's talk about that. A foot injury cost him 7 games in 2016. He has started both at right and left tackle. 13 starts at left tackle, all in 2017. 10 starts at right tackle, 5 and 15, 5 and 16. So this is a guy that has played in 31 games, started 23 of them. So you're getting a guy that, outside of the foot injury, has been extremely durable throughout his career. But he's a guy that is still a newbie. Okay, only 13 starts, 1 season's worth at left tackle, and only 10 starts at right tackle. So, and you're talking about a junior here. So this is a guy that still has, I think, a little bit of seasoning left to be done. And so I think that was why a lot of people were like, Kolton Miller this early. But in this particular draft, if you want a player like this that gives you the size, the height, the length, the athleticism all in one package, you're going to have to act fast, which is what the Raiders decided to do. You go to his cons, really his awareness. And again, awareness is something that you develop over time. He hasn't played enough, only 23 career starts. So this is a guy that he's going to see things, and he's going to be seeing it for the first time, and he's going to have to adjust on the fly, and he's going to have to learn. And sometimes learning is one of those things that comes the hard way. You got to get thrown into the fire, and you're going to make mistakes, but you learn and you benefit from those things. And I talked about Vita Vea getting home on a sack where he split a double team on a twist, where Kolton Miller just fell asleep behind the wheel and reacted too late. And by the time he saw what was going on, Vita Vea was bull rushing his way through both him and the guard and getting to the quarterback. And then there's a blitz versus USC that just overloaded his side, and he just was ill-equipped to deal with it. In those types of situations when they overload your side, obviously the quarterback and the center are going to call out protections, and if they're pinching it down inside, your job is to pick up the MDM, the most dangerous man, and if that guy comes, then you pick him up. If he doesn't, you fan back to the outside and get the guy coming off the edge. And in a situation where there's 2 guys, you pick up the MDM. He was kind of in between. He didn't know which one to pick up. Do I pick up MDM, which obviously supersedes anything else, or do I get this guy screaming off the edge? He kind of was in no man's land, and everybody hit home. And so, like I said, that's a lack of awareness, and all that is just a lack of playing time. The more he plays, the more comfortable he'll get when he sees situations like that. And he'll be able to get to a point where he'll be able to give the guy, the MDM, the guy on the inside that has the most direct path to the quarterback, a shoulder, give him a piece of action, and still get to the guy on the outside and just give him a little shove. Something to knock him off his path so that he doesn't get to the quarterback as fast. And that's all the quarterback a lot of times in those situations, because the quarterback knows he's hot and that they're coming and that he's got to get rid of it quick. Sometimes all you need to do is just get a piece of one guy, get another, just a small piece of the other, and you've done your job. And he'll get better at that. But in any event, it was a surprise to many, including myself, that he went this early, but it was a necessity. And in a draft where the tackle position wasn't as strong, the Raiders simply had to do what they felt like they needed to do. You got an investment like Derek Carr. You need to protect him. They failed to do so last year. They weren't going to make the same mistake. John Gruden wants to run the football. Kolton Miller is going to help you do that. John Gruden wants to protect Derek Carr. Kolton Miller is going to help you do that. So in the first round, 15th overall selection, offensive tackle out of UCLA, Kolton Miller for me is when you're unfamiliar with what small school players are doing and unfamiliar with the process, when teams take guys that aren't household names, it throws you for a loop. And I think that was some of what the problem was with people and the perception of this Raiders draft. Well, what are they doing? Who is this P.J. Hall guy? Who is Brandon Parker? What are they doing? Anyway, that's why watching tape is important. And so this next selection, I'm here to tell you, if this guy is what people think he could become, they might have gotten the next big thing along the defensive line in this draft. Second round, 57th selection overall, Sam Houston State defensive lineman Patrick Hall Jr. is the selection. So let me fill you in on P.J. Hall, who I had to watch a ton of tape on because I wasn't satisfied with the tape that was available to me initially. And so I had to go sniffing and finding, because this guy was too dominant. The numbers that he put up, and first of all, any guy from a small school, you know what I say, and you know my prerequisite. My only prerequisite is dominate the competition. If you go to a smaller school, all I want you to do is dominate. That's how you get your way to the next level. And this guy dominated in every sense of the word. And the first two games that I watched him in, against Incarnate Word, again, you're going to hear some weird schools here, and North Dakota State, it just wasn't good enough for me. I was like, this isn't the level of dominance that I was expecting from a guy with the numbers that he put up and the overall pick that he was selected out of a smaller school. In order to get drafted this high, you've got to be dominant, and I just didn't see dominance. So what I did is I went back to 2016 is really where I had to go. And I started in 2017 against Southeastern Louisiana, but I worked my way to 16 because in 17, the word was out. And the word was out in 16, but more so in 17, teams made a conscious, concerted effort to say, look, P.J. Hall isn't going to beat us. If we got to triple team this guy, we will. But he saw constant doubles in 17. Well, that's why there was a huge drop-off in numbers. In 16 and in 15 and even in 14, this guy was utterly destructible. I mean, he was just destructive is what I meant to say. And he just blew up games. And he wrecked game plans, and he was damn near unblockable at times. So I went back in 16 and watched him against Houston Baptist and against Jane Madison, and both in 2016. And I've got what I was looking for. I got the dominance. I got why this guy. First of all, how did teams miss? How did Division I programs miss on this guy? And he evolved into what he ultimately became. But let's talk about P.J. Hall. Okay, I'm done with all of the pregame warm-up here. 6'1", 310. He's probably more so 6 feet. I think 6'1" is a little generous. 310 pounds. being that he didn't show up at the combine, you're going off of numbers you get from the school. And his pro day, he's probably more along the lines of 6 feet, probably closer to 300 than 310. In any event, this guy's a freak. 36 reps of 2 1/4, 38-inch vertical. Let me say that again. 38-inch vertical. And the 38-inch vertical is legit because he squats over 700 pounds. I repeat, this guy squats over 700 pounds. And it's not like he barely did. This guy cleans it easily. Wow. And so the 38-inch vertical is ridiculous. Listen to these career stats. 93.5 tackles for loss. 42 sacks. These are cartoon numbers, I know. 7 forced fumbles and 14 blocked kicks. Let me repeat that. 14 blocked kicks. Are you kidding me? Punts, field goals, all of it. So, and again, take it with a grain of salt. He played at Sam Houston State. He played against the likes of Incarnate Word and Houston Baptist, okay? So, Southeastern Louisiana, these are the teams he's playing against. So take that with a grain of salt, okay? Understand the competition, but also understand the level of dominance that he showed and exuded over this competition cannot be ignored. This guy, trust me, the numbers wouldn't have been as inflated, but this guy would have been just as dominant as if he would have played in the SEC. So I just don't understand how teams missed on this guy. But in any event, measurables, 6 feet, 300 pounds is right around where he really is. But again, for his size and what he does, it's great. Athleticism, 4'7" at 300 pounds. Are you kidding me? This guy, like I said, he's a freak. And a lot of people liken him to Aaron Donald. I don't think he's Aaron Donald, but he has a chance to be a dominant force up front on the same wavelength as an Aaron Donald. I think he has the opportunity to be more of Fletcher Cox than he does Aaron Donald. But even if he's Fletcher Cox, you'll take that and you'll run with it because Fletcher Cox is one of the best defensive interior linemen on the defensive side of the football in all of football. So in any event, hand usage, he uses his hands extremely well. You don't get 42 career sacks without using your hands. Awareness, off the charts. Point of attack physicality. This guy stands up to double teams consistently, splits double teams consistently, is on the other side of the line of scrimmage consistently. He's just a headache for opposing offenses. Redirect, changes directions extremely well. Ability versus the run, 93.5 tackles for loss. Again, in college football, in that total goes sacks, but you take away the sacks, there's still 41.5 total tackles for loss in there. So, again, what are we talking about here? Pass rushing ability, you don't get 42 sacks without being able to win. And they moved him all around at Sam Houston State. You watch him in that Houston Baptist game, and he just punished them. He was utterly destructive in that game. 3 or 4 sacks, a number of tackles for loss, blowing up plays and allowing other guys to make plays. He was just a wrecking ball in that game. He's a problem, man. Tackling ability, he's one of those guys that if he gets his hands on you, he's gonna get you down. You know, motor endurance, they're solid. He's a big guy though, so he does need to take breaks. He's one of those dudes. You keep him fresh. Excuse me. You're gonna get high level production out of this guy. End of discussion. Impact on the game. I gave you all the numbers. You know, this guy's infecting the game in every way imaginable. I mean, look at him. Even in the art, this guy's blocking a kick, knocking down a pass, batted balls, blocked kicks, forced fumbles. In the games that I watched him, he had 7 career forced fumbles. At least 3 or 4 of them came in the games, 2 of the games I watched. Seemed like every sack came with a forced fumble. Obviously, that's not the case, but it felt that way. Balls coming out. He's blowing up plays in the backfield. He's stringing out runs. He's getting to the quarterback, making him uncomfortable, flushing him out of the pocket, blowing up double teams, splitting them, getting into the backfield, making the running back change his course and track before he can even get started, and allowing someone else to make a play. His impact on the game is profound. There are no negatives here, only positives. The only negative is he played at Sam Houston State at an FCS, and because of that, you take it with a grain of salt. Is that dominance going to translate? But I'm telling you right now, P.J. Hall could have played at Ole Miss. He could have played at Auburn or Georgia or Alabama, and he would have been just as dominant. The numbers wouldn't have been this cartoonish, but his numbers, you would have extrapolated that to the SEC, and it would have been just as dominant. He's that good. And the Raiders got themselves now, this is the thing, and this is why this isn't a home run. How does he translate? Because they've played this guy in the 2-point stance. They played him in a 3-point stance. They played him at defensive end as a 5-tech. They played him at defensive end as a 4-tech. They played him inside as a 3-tech. They played him over the nose as a 0. They played him everywhere. So the question then becomes, left end, right end, what do you do with him? Where do you play him? A guy like P.J. Hall, to me, he's similar. P.J. Hall, a guy that you drafted later in this draft in Maurice Hurst, and another one of my favorites in this draft, the defensive lineman out of Florida, Taven Bryan. These are all guys that I don't want to see them wasted as a 2-gap run-stopping defender. Let these guys be 1-gap penetrators. Let them be utterly destructive to an offense. Let them destroy and wreck things. Don't have them worrying about gaps on both sides. Let them be 1-gap up the field penetrators. That's what P.J. Hall is. You let this guy be a 1-gap penetrator. Watch this guy go to work. And you can move him around. I love this selection. The only question I have is, can he dominate at the next level? We're going to see. But in the second round, 57th overall selection, Sam Houston State defensive lineman P.J. Hall for me is. Now, of the first 3 picks and the guys that were surprises, obviously P.J. Hall was a surprise to many. Brandon Parker here, 3rd round, 65th overall selection. North Carolina State, or North Carolina A&T, excuse me, offensive tackle Brandon Parker is the selection. So as I was mentioning, as I jumped the gun, Brandon Parker was probably the surprise. Of the first 3 guys that were surprises, Kolton Miller maybe a little early, P.J. Hall, who the hell is he? Brandon Parker, again, who the hell is he? He's the one that didn't belong. I thought it was way too early for him. Watching him on tape, he's very raw, got a long way to go. But I see what the Raiders are doing. They want size. They want length. They want athleticism. Kolton Miller, 6'9", 309, 34-inch arms. Brandon Parker, 6'8", 305, 35-inch arms. So they're looking for length, size, and athleticism, and they got it here in Brandon Parker. Is he raw? You damn right he is. Was he worthy of this pick? I'm not sure. Not when guys like Joseph Naughty Boom was still available out of TCU, and Jerron Christian, who went, I think, a few picks later to the Redskins down the road, was available out of Louisville. Just to name a few of guys that I thought were a little bit better. Even Okafor out of Western, or I think he's out of Western Michigan. Even I think he might have been a better option, but I think they were looking for a little bit more athleticism. Jaron Christian, I thought, would have been a better selection here. But let's talk about Brandon Parker. Measurables, obviously, off the charts here with Brandon Parker. Athleticism, 5'4", 40 guy, but he can move. He's a big guy that is light on his feet. Technique, barely made it in the positives. He's got a long way to go. I don't think he uses his hands well enough right now. He's got great length, but he doesn't use it to his advantage. He lets guys get into his body. He doesn't shoot his hands consistently early enough. Again, I talked about this earlier. I talk about it all the time, as a matter of fact, with tackles, especially guys with longer arms and reach. As a boxer, you want to put that jab out there. You know, Lennox Lewis didn't want guys like Mike Tyson getting on the inside. That's where guys with shorter arms win, on the inside. So what you want to do? Keep them outside at the edge of your jab. Keep them on the outside. Don't let them in. Same thing with the tackle. Keep a guy at bay with your length. Jab. Use that punch to keep them at bay and keep them on the outside, and you control the action. Well, he doesn't do that. He lets guys into his body too often, doesn't use his hands consistently. He's got a long ways to go there. I think his kick slide needs a little bit of work. At times that can be a little sloppy and slow. He's got work to do, but the pieces are all here, and that's what intrigued the Raiders here in the third round. Anchor, balance, and redirect, as well as toughness, they're all solid, but they all can be better. None of those really strike me as strong points. I saw him get jacked up, put on skates at times. He was on the ground a little bit too much for my liking when he didn't need to be, so balance is an issue there. For a guy with solid athleticism, his redirect isn't all that great. So, again, these are all things that he's solid at, but I think he could be better in all of those different departments. Run and pass blocking, I think he's equally good at both. Good enough that if called upon early in his career, he could come in and help. But there's some fine-tuning to do here with Brandon Parker. And if I'm not mistaken, you've got the cable guy back in Oakland, and he's got some work to do here with Brandon Parker. A lot to work with here, but a lot of work to be done for sure. Recovery, he's got length. So if he gets beaten around the edge, or if he gets beaten to the inside, which I saw him get beat to the inside, he overextended, opened up way too early, and got beat to the inside. I thought he got away with a couple of holes. And when you watch tape on him, you'll hear this. Man, Brandon Parker might have gotten away with a little bit of a hold there. Well, you don't hear it with him. You hear it with one of these prospects a little bit later on in the draft that I'll talk about. But I said that to myself. Damn, he got away with a hold there. You know, and his hand placement isn't always the greatest. I think they're outside the shoulder pads a little bit too often. So he's a guy that I think can get caught up in some hog tie situations, especially when he gets beat to the inside. But he can recover because he's got the length to do so. Pulling, I thought he was solid when he was asked to pull to get to the outside. There were certain situations where he just wasn't fast enough, but again, he's got quality athleticism, and when he's asked to pull and get to the second level, I think he's solid in doing so. And availability, this is one of his better attributes. He started every game over the last 3 years, or didn't miss a game, and started every game over the last 3 years at North Carolina A&T. So he's a guy that you know is going to strap it up for you and has been relatively healthy throughout his collegiate career. You look at his cons, awareness. He's a guy that I think sometimes, similar to Kolton Miller, just needs a little bit more repetition. And this guy got a lot of reps at A&T, and it was dominant at A&T, which if you're looking to get drafted in this early at a smaller school, you need to dominate. He did. But there are times where I think he just doesn't see things as fast. There was one blitz to his side where he just was completely flummoxed by the blitz on his side. Had no idea a guy was coming off the edge hot, and by the time he realized what the hell was going on, guy had already run by him. He tried to get a hand on him. He was way too late. He just has to be a little bit more aware of his surroundings, what's going on around him. But again, all of this will happen with coaching, with time, with film study. I know what the Raiders were doing here. I just thought there were better options on the board at the time of this selection. Okorafor out of Western Michigan. I would have Joseph Naughty Boom out of TCU. And to me, the guy that should have been the pick here, if you were looking for a long athletic tackle, was Jerron Christian out of Louisville. Guy that's a swing tackle that could have played both left or right, gives you the athleticism and the length you're looking for. That was the guy here. If you were looking tackle this early, again, for a second time, if you were looking to double dip and you wanted athleticism, that's the guy that you should have selected, not Brandon Parker. But you did what you did when you thought you needed to do it. And so in the third round, 65th pick overall, North Carolina A&T tackle Brandon Parker, for me, is a as we continue on in the third round with this Raiders draft, third round pick for the Raiders, this time 87th overall, LSU edge rusher Arden Key, the much maligned edge rusher Arden Key, is the selection. Not going to break Arden Key down here as I've already done so in the Draft Prospects 101 series. So if you're looking for a thorough breakdown of Arden Key, you're going to need to check out the Draft Prospects 101 series on the Louie T Network. Go to the playlist section, find the 2018 Draft Prospects 101 series, and there you will find a thorough breakdown of Arden Key. I will say this is a complete steal at this point. This guy, if he would have come out a year ago, would have probably been a top 10 pick in the draft. But because of all of the transgressions and things that have happened to him over this 1 year span, from him leaving the team, from him gaining a ton of weight, from him being questioned as to his love of football, the stock has dropped. And you could get a steal here. This guy could be the next Aldon Smith. He's got that kind of ability, and you're getting him here in the third round. The only question I have, and I'm second-guessing myself as to whether this should be a double or a triple, is what are you going to ask Arden Key to do? Are you going to ask him to gain weight? And I think the Raiders currently have him listed as 253 pounds, which is what he was when he showed up at the combine. He showed up heavy. He didn't test well. He didn't look natural. And he was heavy throughout the season at LSU because he was coming off of a surgery and because he hadn't been in game shape. He was heavy, and he didn't look like the same guy. He wasn't the same explosive, dynamic edge rusher that we had seen the first 2 years at LSU. And I think he needs to be around 240 pounds to be that dynamic edge rusher. But what are the Raiders going to ask him to do? Because he's not going to be stout at the point of attack at 240. At 250, he's a lot more stout at the point of attack, but then he's not the same rusher. And I value his ability to get after the quarterback more than I value his ability to stop the run. I can get somebody else to stop the run. I need guys that can get to the quarterback. Arden Key is a guy that can get to the quarterback, but not at 253 pounds consistently. So my question then is, what are the Raiders going to ask him to do? What are the Raiders going to allow him to do? And then does this guy actually love football or not? Those are all questions I don't know the answers to, and I'm going against my better judgment because this guy has elite talent, but I just don't know. I have too many questions, but because of the timing of where you got this guy and what I think he can provide for you, if everything is right with Arden Key for what he can provide for you in a league that is absolutely starving for guys that can get to the quarterback at a position of need for this Raiders football team, because Khalil Mack is a stud on one side. Nobody's afraid of the West Virginia guy you got from Seattle on the other side. Nobody's afraid of him. You need someone that is a threat on the opposite side of Khalil Mack. Shalik Calhoun was a failed experiment, and he looked a lot like Arden Key. Obviously, he's a lot bigger than Arden Key, but that didn't work. Arden Key could be the missing piece on that defensive line as a rush linebacker. However you want to employ it. We'll see what happens. I'm going against my better judgment, but in the third round, 87th overall selection, LSU edge rusher Arden Key for me is this next selection is a guy that had a rough go of it in the offseason. Tore a pec working out for a team, or triceps muscle working out for a team in a workout. And I think that really hurt his draft stock. But just the tape alone, to me, wasn't good enough for him to even be mentioned in the same breath as some of those other guys earlier in the draft. But nonetheless, 4th round, 110th overall selection, Wisconsin cornerback Nick Nelson is the selection. So here's the thing that I think attracted Nick Nelson to the Oakland Raiders. I don't love him as a cornerback. I think he is solid. But I think it's the combination of what he brings to the table as a cornerback and a return man, that extra value you get. He's your TJ Carey replacement, essentially, is what Nick Nelson is. And so in that regard, when you look at it in that way, through those rose-colored glasses, then I like the pick. But if you're just going off of his ability, I've got questions. Not nearly enough answers. Let's get into Nick Nelson, though. 5'11", 200 pounds, 17 reps of 2 1/4. That's really good for a corner. 1 punt return touchdown, which I got to see, which was a thing of beauty versus Michigan. Ball hits the ground. He lets it bounce, which he's got to stop doing. He's got to stop letting the football hit the ground. He should have come up and caught that football. Probably should have fair caught it, given up fair field position, and I saw him do that quite a bit, where he lets it hit the ground and it trickles down. Go get the football, young fella. But in this particular situation, ball hits the ground, it dies. There's a Michigan defender that kind of circles around him because he gets blocked. And so Nick Nelson says, I'll just pick this up, see what I can do with it. And he gets to the sidelines, gets an extra block, able to stick his foot in the ground, cut it back against the grain, breaks the tackle, and next thing you know, he's out the gate for a touchdown. Blocked 2 kicks in his career, forced 2 fumbles. He's a transfer from Hawaii, finished up school there early, was able to transfer over to Wisconsin, and came out early as a redshirt junior. And so this is a guy that he's multifaceted, but here's the thing that scares me with him. You know what? I'll save it for later when we get to his cons. Let's go through his pros quickly. Measurables, 5'11", 210. Not the best in the world, but you can definitely do worse than 5'11", 200 pounds. Speed, 4'5", 240. He's got solid speed. You can run by him. Saw him run by on tape enough times to know that you can run by him. And the 4'5", says that. And when you're 5'11", generally I'm looking for a 4'4" guy. And it is what it is. You know, he's got good athleticism. He's got good acceleration. So all of that in that package of 4'5", 240 is good enough to get this guy by and allow him to be in the picture to make a play on the football. Change of direction, agility, all of those things are really exceptional for Nick Nelson, especially when you consider he's a punt returner. Agility and change of directions are all things that come with that package when you're an elite punt returner. And he's a guy that does have that click and close ability, plant his foot in the ground and drive on the football to make a play. You see that when he's in zone coverage a lot, off and soft. He'll drive on a slant. He'll drive on an in-breaking route, try to make a play. Tackling, willingness to tackle. He's not looking for work, but if you come his way, he will get in the fray. Zone coverage ability, I think he's best off in zone right now because he gets a chance to identify what's going on in front of him. He's also able to key eyes on the quarterback and then react to it. So I think right now he's better in zone than he is in man. And then obviously probably his best attribute to date is his versatility. He comes in And right off the bat, you get a guy that can handle some punt return duties, also can play in the slot if necessary, and also can go out wide in a pinch. So I think that's what attracted him to the Raiders, because if you're just going off of pure cornerback play, I thought there were other guys at the time of this pick that would have benefited the Raiders better than a Nick Nelson. But if you go with the totality of what this guy brings to the table, and that being a punt returner as well, then I see why the Raiders made the selection of Nick Nelson. And I think that's why they drafted him, because they are looking for a T.J. Carey replacement. And this guy fits that mold to a T. But you go to his cons, and I've got a lot of issues with Nick Nelson as a cornerback. The first of which is his anticipation and awareness. I don't think he sees things fast enough. He doesn't anticipate. He's not natural in that sense. He doesn't see things. He's more reactionary than he is proactive as a corner. And the way you get interceptions as a corner is you are proactive. You see things before they happen. Therefore, you're able to jump a route. Therefore, you're able to undercut a route. Therefore, you are able to sag off in coverage and make a play on the football. He didn't do that, which takes us to our next huge con. Ball skills. No career interceptions despite 42 career pass breakups. That is a huge problem for me. The last guy that was of note that came into the league with a ton of pass breakups but no interceptions was Mackenzie Alexander, and he's been a bum in the league. And so there's something to be said about no interceptions. You gotta be able to pick the football off. And you get all these PBUs, you can't tell me that of the 42 PBUs, 4 or 5 of them weren't passes that were very pickable, that he just decided to knock down, or the football went through his hands. There's an issue here. And part of the reason that he doesn't have any interceptions is my next big, and you know this is a huge pet peeve for me, he's not, I repeat, not an LLCer. For those of you not aware of what an LLCer is, a guy that looks, locates, and contests the football. He doesn't look back. He does not look back for the football. He's a guy that plays the receiver, and as the receiver goes to make a play on the ball, so does he by putting up his hands and raking and trying to dislodge the football. He's not looking back. And when you don't locate ball, you can't make a play on the football. Watching his tape was frustrating, and I'll take it a step further. Let's go to his man coverage, because this is also a negative for me. This guy is extremely handsy. If you watch his tape, and I watched him in 4 games, versus Maryland, versus Indiana, versus Michigan, versus Miami, all in 2017. When you watch his tape, you're going to hear this on tape a ton of times, and you're going to say this to yourself on tape a ton of times. Damn, he got away with a hold there. He got away with a little bit of a hold there. He is extremely handsy. He doesn't trust himself. He panics when the ball's in the air. Guy gets a step on him. He's grabbing, he's tugging, he's pulling. He's got to stop being so goddamn handsy. He's a molester. And he's going to get charged a bunch of times at the next level. I don't love him in man-to-man situations. It just really frustrates me watching him in coverage with ball in air. He was abused by a bigger receiver in Simi Cobbs. Simi Cobbs, I likened him to Denzel Ward, same size. Ward a lot smaller in terms of weight, but both had trouble with Simi Cobbs and his size. But unlike Ward, who was able to get revenge by picking off a pass later in the game, Nick Nelson wasn't. Nick Nelson had about 3 PIs in that game and gave up a touchdown to Simi Cobbs, a bigger body receiver. I'm not a Nick Nelson fan as a corner. I'm a Nick Nelson fan in terms of totality of package, punt returner, and versatility. But I thought there were better guys on the board at the time of their selection. But in any event, we'll see what happens with Nick Nelson. I think he might be better suited for the slot when it's all said and done. 4th round, 110th pick overall, Wisconsin cornerback Nick Nelson for me is Fifth round, buck 40 is the selection here. Out of Michigan, defensive lineman Maurice Hurst may be the crown jewel of this Oakland Raider draft. Here's what I think. (6'1", 292. So much promise here. We know about the irregular EKG that surfaced at the combine, which ruled him out of the combine, scared a lot of teams off. It makes me a little nervous, I'm not going to lie to you, because we've seen guys with some heart conditions. No one wants to see someone die on the football field. And heart conditions aren't to be played with. And we saw Nick Fairley miss an entire year last year after signing a new deal with the Saints after a previously undetected heart condition was discovered. And so he had to sit out all of last year. Heart situations scare people. Gaines Adams, a former first-round pick, died of an undetected heart condition. So teams had reason to be leery with this particular prospect here, Maurice Hurst. But if the heart is good, and he was checked out back in Detroit by several cardiologists, everything checked out well there. If the heart is good, the heart is strong, the heart is well, you got unequivocally the steal of the draft in a first-round talent in the 5th round in Maurice Hurst. The upside on this guy is staggering, okay? 31-inch vert on a damn near 300-pound frame. Has NFL bloodlines. His dad played in the league at the cornerback position. Only missed 1 game in 3 seasons, so you're getting a pretty durable guy. Here are some career stats. 12.5 sacks, 5 of which is a career high, came in 2017. Best football being played at the right time. 33.5 tackles for loss, 19.5 which came in 2017, also a career high. Best football being played at the right time. 2 forced fumbles and 2 blocked kicks. So again, getting another guy in the trenches that offers you some versatility as a guy that can block kicks and impact the game in numerous ways. So let's get to Maurice Hurst and why I think that you might have gotten the steal of the draft here in the 5th round if this guy is in fact healthy. Talked about his measurables already at 6'1", 292. Athleticism is off the charts, 4'9", 40. But past the 40, the quickness that this guy possesses off the snap is stupid, okay? You couple him with P.J. Hall's quickness, and you've got a tandem that can change the game. And if you can ever get Mario Edwards Jr. back to what he was before the neck injury, your defensive line could be outrageously disruptive in Oakland if these guys are what we think they're capable of being. All right, his athleticism, his ability to chase plays down, sideline to side, is uncanny. This guy has a different level of motor, and his get off the line of scrimmage is one that will affect games. And like I said with P.J. Hall, like I mentioned with Taven Bryan earlier when I talked about P.J. Hall, Maurice Hurst is a guy that I don't want to see wasted as a 2-gapper. Let this guy 1-gap penetrate up the field. Let this guy be a disruptive force on the opposite side of the line of scrimmage, because that is what this guy is built to do. Hand usage is really solid for a guy that I think is still coming into his own as a football player. Point of attack physicality off the freaking charts. This guy wins at the line of scrimmage, can stand up to a double team. He makes it his business. He makes it a point of emphasis to get lower than the man in front of him in obvious rundowns. He'll fall on the ground and get to a knee just so he can win the leverage battle and stand the guy up. But he stands his ground at the point of attack. Redirect is good, can change directions, get to the ball carrier, can redirect offensive linemen. Ability versus the run, to me, is his strength right now. He's still honing his skills as a pass rusher, but his ability versus the run is his calling card right now, and he's dominant in that regard. Pass rushing ability, I still think that he has the ability to rush the passer, and he's going to get better at that. And he wins with a swim. He has a spin move as well. They moved him around at Michigan, played at defensive end as a 5 tech. They kicked him inside as a 0. This is a guy that also played him at a 3, which I think is probably more natural for him. This is a guy that can do a lot, and he's only going to get better as a pass rusher. Tackling ability, he's one of those guys, he gets his hands on you, you're going down. Motor, his motor is unmatched. He's one of those guys that's going to chase plays down. I watched him make several tackles, 7-8 yards past the line of scrimmage, where he had to go chase a guy down from behind. Good endurance for a guy that's playing the amount of snaps and giving you the kind of effort that this guy gives you, snap in, snap out. And his impact on the game is phenomenal. There are no negatives here with Maurice Hurst. This is a first-round talent that you got in the 5th round. Think about that. Process that for a second. You got a top 20, top 25 selection at 140 in the 5th round of the 2018 NFL Draft. This is unheard of that this kind of production falls for anything other than a character flaw. You got this guy because of a heart condition that may not exist. Now that's scary. Keep in mind, that is very scary. But if the heart is good, you got not only the steal of your draft, you got the steal of the draft in the 5th round. There is no better value than Maurice Hurst in the 5th round if the heart is good. The upside on this guy is through the roof. And because of that, you get the rare, the very rare 5th round Jack in the 5th round, 140th overall selection. Michigan defensive lineman Maurice Hurst is hit hard. He's hit deep.
Hits it high. Hits it deep. It is out of here.
And in typical Raiders fashion, we go from a 5th round Jack to a damn punter. 5th round, 173rd overall selection. Punter out of Florida. Johnny Townsend is the selection. While I kid about Johnny Townsend and the Raiders taking a punter, this was a necessity. You let your charismatic, very talented, but also very volatile punter Marquette King go in the offseason, and go figure, he would take a beeline to a divisional rival in the Denver Broncos. But you needed a punter. There was a void there that needed to be filled. You decided to spend a 5th round pick. And I've always said, I don't mind a team spending a 5th, 6th, or 7th round pick on a specialist. Anything before that, I have a problem with. I don't give a damn how good the punter is. You don't take a punter before the 5th round, and you don't take field goal kickers before the 5th round. I don't give a damn how good the field goal kicker is. You can find a good field goal kicker in the later rounds. You can find an undrafted good field goal kicker. Same with the punter. Late rounds, undrafted. You can find a guy that can get the job done at a high level. There's no need to spend anything earlier than a 5th round pick. Raiders abide by my rule, so I have no problem with this selection. I'll quickly give you what I got on Johnny Townsend, and then we'll move on. He's a punter, and while we poo-poo punters and we shit on them, they're still humans, they're still people, they're still players, and you got to keep this in mind. They may not put points on the board, which I do downgrade them a little bit. I treat field goal kickers, place kickers a little bit more, and I hold them in higher regard because they put points or take them off the scoreboard, so they're more important to me. But just as impactful sometimes is the ability of a punter to pin a team inside the 5 after you had to punt from your own 40 and he had to punt from midfield, and you don't want him punting it into the end zone or having a guy fair catch it at the 15. You want him to drop it at the 2 and have him down it. You want him to be able to flip the field position. You're punting from your own end zone, and he's able to boom a 61-yarder and have you get down there, and the other team now has to start from their own 43. That's what you're looking for, and Johnny Townsend can provide you with that. So this is what I have in my notes. 47.7 yards over the last 2 years in gross yardage per punt. Over that same span, he was able to garner 54 punts inside the 20, 31 of which were fair catches, and 12 touchbacks, only 12 touchbacks in that same 2-year span. He's good at directional kicks. He's not a softie. Go watch him in the Kentucky game. They were double teaming him all game. He got fed up. And so he was able to shake one guy, and then he absolutely leveled the other guy, pancaked him, jumped on top of him. I said, okay, Johnny, you ain't no bitch. So you want guys that's not afraid to be physical, tackle when they have to, and you want a guy that can kick it. You want a guy that can directional kick it. That's a lost art. Guys that can coffin corner and coffin kick the football. He can do that. And it doesn't hurt that Reggie McKenzie knows his family because his brother went to Tennessee, where Reggie McKenzie is a graduate, and that's his alma mater, and his son went there. And so he's familiar with the Townsend family. So it's all good for Johnny Townsend, and he's not going to have any competition in camp. He's the guy. And so in the 5th round, 173rd overall pick, punter out of Florida, Johnny Townsend is as we move into the penultimate pick of this Raiders draft, 6th round, 216th overall pick, linebacker out of Washington, Azeem Victor is the selection. So here's a long, rangy, active defender. Thought he would be a little bit more athletic than what he was. And I think there was a misconception about these Washington linebackers because for the last 3 years, I watched these guys run around, make a ton of plays. And I think similar to Alabama, when you've got a lot of talent around you, guys on the defensive line that are eating up space and allowing you to roam free, and you've got guys in the secondary that are doing their job, it allows guys to run around, make plays, and maybe seem a little bit faster, a little bit more active, a little bit better than what they really are. And that Washington defense has been loaded over the last 3 or 4 years. A ton of guys going high in the draft, in the secondary, along the defensive line. And so Azeem Victor was another one of those guys that was a beneficiary of a really talented defense. And he was good, but he wasn't as good as I thought. So 6'2", 240, so long, has some size on him. He's cut a little bit of weight to be a little bit more faster, I think, since being drafted. But 33-inch arms, so he's long. Plays with a ton of energy. One of those guys that loves to talk and chirp. So you got to watch him. He's a little mouthy and will cause a little bit of some brouhahas and a few fracases throughout the course of a game because he's running his lip. But 19 reps of 2 1/4. Here's a guy that had some issues in 2017. Probably would have been a lot higher regarded had he come out after 2016, decided to go back to school, and it did not really benefit him. Dealt with some injuries and some suspensions in 2017 that really marred his senior season at Washington. Broke his leg, and this is why he didn't come out after 16. Broke his leg versus USC in 2016. Missed the final 4 games of that season after the broken leg. And then he came back, had a suspension for DUI in 2017, and then another suspension for breaking team rules, and also had, issues off the field. So that's something to keep in mind. 3.5 career sacks, 3 forced fumbles, and 14 tackles for a loss. Let's jump into Azeem Victor and his pros quickly. Measurables, solid at 6'2", 240, 235, which is where he is right now. Speed, 4.72. I thought he was going to be faster than that, but again, I was wrong about him and Keyshawn Bierria and all of those guys that were running around making plays at the linebacker position. I thought they were going to be faster, and they were both 4.7 guys. Acceleration is solid. It barely made it into the positives. He's not going to wow you with his sideline to sideline speed and ability to close the distance between he and a ball carrier. Redirect is solid. Awareness, this was almost a negative. He's not instinctual. He's one of those guys that has to see it. He doesn't trust his eyes. He has to see it physically happening before he does anything. And he's not good enough to allow guys to get to the second level and blockers to get on him to make plays. He's not good enough to scrape. He's not good enough to shed. He's not good enough to allow things to happen and then go make a play. So he was, like I said, the beneficiary of guys up front eating up blockers, which allowed him to roam free to make some plays. But he's so slow off the football to make things happen. He's a little bit too patient in that regard. He takes on blocks, though. He's not afraid to take on blockers. Tackling ability is solid. I did see him miss some tackles. I did see him be aggressive and come in with shoulders, which I would like to see him wrap up a little bit more. But he can get the job done as a tackler. Zone coverage ability is okay. It's not great. I don't see this guy being on the field in third down situations. I see him more as a guy that you want in run situations and blitzing situations, being aggressive around the line of scrimmage, not away from it. And range is also solid, not great, but good enough for him to potentially make this Raiders roster. You look at his cons quickly. His ability to slip and shed blockers isn't very good. When guys are able to engage him, he has a tough time disengaging and getting to the ball carrier. His man-to-man coverage stinks. Again, I don't think he's a guy you want in those types of situations. Blitzing capabilities, I think he can be a better blitzer. I put it down as a negative because I don't think he got the most out of his capabilities as a blitzer. I think he needs to time him up better. He doesn't disguise when he's coming at all. But when he does, he's able to hit home. I'd like to see him be a little bit more patient in his approach to the line of scrimmage, be a little bit more deceptive, hold his water a little bit more when blitzing because he's got enough juice to get there if he can just wait. I think he can be a better blitzer and have that be a little bit more of an asset to his game than it is right now. But I looked at what the Raiders did in the offseason at the inside linebacker position, which was one of the weak spots of their football team. You go out, you get Emmanuel Lemire that's going to add some athleticism to your linebacking core in general. He's more of an outside guy. Derek Johnson coming in as a wily veteran. I don't know how much he has left in the tank. Obviously, Kansas City didn't think he had a lot to give. And then Tahir Whitehead was the big offseason get inside. He's a stud. He's going to upgrade your linebacking position. I don't know if there's space on this roster for Azeem Victor or not. I can see him making this roster. I could easily see him not making this roster. He's going to have to wow on special teams. That energy that he plays with is going to have to be infectious in camp. And maybe he'll have a shot. But right now, I'm not so sure of that. But in any event, 6th round, 216th overall pick, linebacker out of Washington, Azeem Victor is this last selection is one that I really like, and I'm always a huge proponent of getting guys that have something that you don't, that bring something to the table that is rare. And this is a height, weight, speed type of guy here late in the draft. And this is when you take guys just like this, 7th round, 228th pick overall. Oklahoma State wide receiver Marcel Aitman is the selection. So Marcel Aitman is 6'5", 216, runs a 4.6, 240, which doesn't seem fast, but can sneak up on you. If you fall asleep, if you're flat-footed and he's able to gain and build up speed, he can accelerate and will accelerate right past you. We saw it quite a bit at Oklahoma State, but he gives the Raiders something that they've lacked since allowing their big special teams red zone threat move on to the Buffalo Bills. His name escapes me, but you guys know who I'm referring to. A guy that Derek Carr was very comfortable throwing the football to especially in the red zone, and he would make plays. And Aitman is a guy that you can do that to. Can go up and get the football, get it at his highest point, gives you some size, something you lack at the receiver position. 6'2" and 6'5" are vastly different components. And so 6'5" is something that the Raiders just, they didn't have. And this guy's going to give you that. And I think he's going to not only make this Raiders roster, but he's going to give you an opportunity to do some things, not only in the red zone, but in some 50-50 jump ball situations, which Derek Carr is more than capable and comfortable at doing. 33-inch arms to go along with that 6'5" frame. 13 reps of 2 1/4. 34-inch vertical goes great with that 6'5" frame. And foot surgery caused him all of 2016. So that's a little bit of a concern. And he also has a son, which shows you hopes. You think that comes with a level of maturity. That, you know, he's hungry. He's got something to prove. And he's playing for more than just himself. He's playing for his family. So you like that sometimes. Measurables off the chart: 6'5", 216, 34-inch vert, 33-inch arms. He's got good hands. You know, the thing I don't like with his hands, and I put this down under the toughness notes, but we can talk about it now, is I want to see him improve with toughness when he's being contested for the football. There are too many instances where it's a tightly contested ball, DB swipes at his arms or at football, and he doesn't have the strength to hold on to the rock, and it comes out. He'll go up and get it, and as he's bringing it down, DB, and that's the thing, you start to see these bigger receivers doing this, just like in the NBA. Don't bring the ball down, okay? You're amongst the trees. Don't bring it down to where the little guys have a chance to swipe. If you're a big man in the NBA, you're taught, keep the ball up and go up with it up over your head. Why? So that the little guys can't swipe at it. You're starting to see guys like Mike Evans and these bigger receivers catch the football and not even bother to come down with it. If they catch it up here, they keep it up here. Don't bring it down and allow a guy to swipe at it. Don't bring it down to where they have a shot. They can't get up here. He has to learn, keep it up here, man, because he's allowing guys to dislodge the football from his arms, from his hands, too many times. But he's got good hands, strong hands. Solid speed at 4.62, and like I said, he's one of those build-up speed guys. You allow him to take about 5 or 6 steps, flat-footed corner, sitting on a route underneath, he'll be able to run by him. Physicality, he's really solid in that department. I talked about toughness. He just needs to be a little bit tougher with the football. But as a actual receiver, blocking, things of that nature, he's plenty tough. Solid run after the catch. Not going to wow you at 6'5", 216 with run after the catch, but it's solid. Leaping ability and high pointing the football and catch radius. Those 3 things in conjunction with one another are his greatest attributes. His ability to go up and get the football and make things happen at the point of catch is where he separates himself from a lot of receivers and gives him the best shot at making this Raiders roster. Ball tracking, he can go and get it. Blocking, he's not a savage as a blocker, but versus Baylor, there was a nice block that sprung the running back for a touchdown. Versus Iowa State, same thing, big run, keyed by his block on the outside. You don't get big runs without receivers blocking on the outside. And then Virginia Tech late, he had a great block in that game to help them seal away that victory. So he will block when necessary. Dependability and clutchness. You can throw him the football in some tough situations. He can use his body to box out and shield defenders. But there are other guys that are going to come before Marcel Aitman on the list of guys you're looking to get the football to in some crucial situations. Sideline awareness. He does a really good job of getting his feet down in bounds. And production. I talked about him missing all of 2016 with the foot injury. But in 2017, 59 catches, 1,156 yards, 8 touchdowns, all career highs, 19 yards per catch. Shows you his ability to get chunk yardage. Keep in mind, he played in the Big 12. You know how I feel about that conference. No defense whatsoever allowed in the Big 12, but still got to go out and produce. He did. And in 2015, 45 grabs, 766 yards, 5 touchdowns, for 17 yards per grab. So, again, guy getting chunk yardage when he is making plays. You go to his cons quickly. Quickness, suddenness, that's not his strong suit. He's not a strong route runner, so that's the next con. He's not breaking anybody off to separate. He separates with size. And we know that there are 3 ways to separate in this league. You separate with speed, you separate with quickness, or you separate with size. He chooses the latter, and he's able to do that. But guys are going to be in his hip pocket. He's going to have to make contested catches and be stronger with the football because he's not going to win with quickness and suddenness. He's not going to win with route running ability. He's not going to separate that way. He's going to have to win with his size and be able to make tight, contested catches. Versatility, he doesn't offer you much in the way of versatility. He's a boundary receiver. He's not going to win in the slot. He's not going to offer you anything else on specials or anything. So he's going to have to offer you some special teams ability. If he's going to make this roster, he's going to have to be able to go down and make a tackle on special teams. But there's not a lot of versatility right now with Marcell Ateman. But I like him. I like what he brings to the table, and it's something the Raiders lack. You don't have anybody that can go up and get the football. So this is a guy that can do that. So we'll see if he's able to crack this roster. He brings something to the table that you lack. Jordy Nelson isn't 6'5", 215. Neither is Amari Cooper. You traded for a guy for the Cowboys that I think is going to be a nice jitterbug for you in the slot, but he's a slot guy. He's not 6'5", 215. Marcell Ateman is 6'5", 215. And while I like what you're getting in Martavis Bryant, even he isn't 6'5", 215. And he may be suspended. So Marcell Ateman, I said all that to say this. I think this guy's got a shot. And in the 7th round, 228th overall selection, wide receiver out of Oak State, Marcell Ateman is. So that wraps up this Raiders draft. I thought it was a really good haul. I was pleasantly surprised after sitting down and actually analyzing this draft and what the Raiders actually did in this draft. I chastised them. I criticized them initially at looking at this draft and not really knowing the nuances of what they were trying to do. But as I sat down and I thought hard and long about what they were looking to accomplish, and then actually looking at the tape of the players they selected, they didn't do a half bad job. And that's reflected in their score as we take a look. So I don't know how long this Reggie McKenzie-John Gruden partnership is going to last, but the first draft under that conglomerate looked good on paper. You've got some guys that could potentially be studs in this draft along the defensive line in P.J. Hall and Maurice Hurst if things work out the way that we think. Obviously, Kolton Miller and Brandon Parker are big, long, athletic tackles that have some work to do, but could be the future at the tackle positions for this Raiders football team. And so you like what the Raiders did at certain points in this draft. There's some issues with, I have some issues with some of the picks. Parker was a little early for me. Nick Nelson, I didn't love him as a corner, but I think they're looking for him to fill that TJ Carey role, which I think he can and will be able to do adequately. You took a punter in the 5th round. I don't have a problem with that, but you probably could have still gotten a punter maybe after the draft, but you identified a guy you liked, you took him. And at the end of the day, I thought it was a really solid haul by the Oakland Raiders in this draft. And so that's going to do it for the Oakland Raiders and their 2018 draft wrap-up here on the Louie T Network. I've got plenty more where this came from. Make sure you're checking out the website, louietnetwork.net. If you want to see the scores for all of these Raiders prospects individually, check out the website, louietnetwork.net. If you also want to stay in tune to what's going on here, check out the podcast, Louie T Network Podcast, available on Stitcher, available on Apple Podcasts, available on Google Music Play, available on the website, louietnetwork.net. Also, subscribe to Louie T Network if you haven't already done so for more great content. Follow me on Twitter at In the Lab Room on Twitter to stay abreast of what's going on. But in any event, I'm your man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Plenty more videos to come here in this series. And now it's a free-for-all. Every man for himself. First come, first serve. Looking forward to it. I'm your man, Louie T. We're changing the game over here. One video at a time. I'll see you next time. Have a good one.
Louie T Network.